The eviction notice was taped to the door. Bold red letters, 48 hours to vacate. Daniel stood in the hallway of his apartment building, groceries in one hand, the notice in the other, and felt his legs go weak. This couldn't be happening. Not now, not after everything else. 6 months ago, Daniel had a stable job, a healthy savings account, and a future that looked secure. Now he had nothing. The job was gone. The savings were depleted. The girlfriend had left. The car had been repossessed. And in 48 hours, he would be homeless. Daniel walked into his nearly empty apartment and sat on the floor. No furniture left. He had sold everything to pay rent the previous month. He was 32 years old and his life had completely collapsed. But what Daniel didn't know yet, what he couldn't possibly see from the floor of that empty apartment, was that this moment would become the turning point of his entire existence. This total loss would teach him what no success ever could. This is the story of how losing everything became the foundation for gaining what truly matters. Daniel's collapse had been gradual, then sudden. He had worked for 8 years as a financial analyst at a mid-sized firm. The work was stable but unfulfilling. He showed up. He did his job. He collected his paycheck. He saved a modest amount each month. He dated casually. He went out with friends on weekends. His life was fine, not exciting, not meaningful, just fine. But beneath the surface, Daniel was drifting. He had no clear purpose, no strong values, no philosophy guiding his choices. He spent money on things that didn't matter. He wasted time on distractions that didn't satisfy. He was living by default, following the path of least resistance, never questioning whether this was actually the life he wanted. Then the economy shifted. His firm lost several major clients. Layoffs came in waves. Daniel survived the first round, then the second. But in the third wave, his name appeared on the list. 15 minutes to clear his desk. 2 weeks of severance. Good luck. Daniel wasn't worried at first. He had skills. He had experience. He would find another position quickly. But the job market was brutal. Hundreds of applications. A handful of interviews. No offers. His savings started draining. First slowly, then rapidly. Rent, food, insurance, loan payments. The money disappeared faster than he imagined possible. He took contract work where he could find it. Freelance projects that paid poorly and arrived sporadically. It wasn't enough. His girlfriend grew frustrated with his situation. She wanted stability, a future. Daniel couldn't provide either. She left after 4 months. Daniel understood. He had nothing to offer. His car needed repairs he couldn't afford. When it finally died completely, he couldn't pay to fix it or to keep making payments. The bank repossessed it. Daniel started taking buses and walking everywhere. His confidence eroded with each rejection, each bill he couldn't pay, each reminder that he was failing. The final blow came when his landlord informed him that rent was 3 months overdue. Pay immediately or face eviction. Daniel had $700 left. Rent was $1,800. He tried to negotiate. The landlord was sympathetic but firm. Business is business. Pay or leave. Daniel couldn't pay. The eviction notice arrived 2 days later. Now, sitting on the floor of his empty apartment, Daniel felt something he had never felt before. Complete surrender. Not the hopeless kind. Not despair or defeat, but a strange, quiet acceptance. He had been fighting to hold onto a life that was already gone, fighting to maintain an identity that had crumbled, fighting to prove he wasn't a failure, but the fighting was over. He had lost. Everything was gone. And in that moment of total loss, something unexpected happened. Daniel felt free. For the first time in months, the anxiety lifted. There was nothing left to lose, nothing left to protect, nothing left to prove, just him, sitting on a bare floor with nothing except the present moment. Daniel spent that night in his empty apartment thinking, not panicking, not planning frantically, just thinking. He realized that his entire life had been built on a foundation of external things. His job gave him identity. His salary gave him worth. His possessions gave him status. His relationship gave him validation. When those external things collapsed, he collapsed with them, because he had no internal foundation, no core sense of self that existed independently of circumstances. He was like a building with no structure, held up only by the furniture inside. When the furniture was removed, the building fell. Daniel knew he needed to rebuild differently, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. He needed a philosophy, a set of principles that would remain stable regardless of external circumstances. He needed wisdom that could guide him whether he was rich or poor, employed or unemployed, in a relationship or alone. He had no idea where to find this wisdom, but for the first time in his life, he was asking the right questions. The next morning, Daniel packed his remaining possessions into 2 bags and left the apartment. He had nowhere to go. He walked to a public library and sat at a table, trying to figure out his next move. He needed shelter. He needed food. He needed a plan. As he sat there, overwhelmed and exhausted, he noticed a book someone had left on the table. The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. The title caught his attention. The obstacle is the way. What did that mean? Daniel opened the book and started reading. The first chapter explained a concept from ancient Stoic philosophy. Every obstacle contains an opportunity. Every setback contains a lesson. Every loss contains a path forward. The Stoics believed that external events are neutral, neither good nor bad in themselves. What matters is how we respond to them. We can let obstacles destroy us, or we can use them to become stronger, wiser, better. Daniel read that paragraph 3 times. His entire collapse, the job loss, the depleted savings, the breakup, the eviction, what if these weren't catastrophes? What if they were opportunities? Opportunities to learn, to grow, to become someone different, someone better. Daniel spent the entire day in that library reading. He finished The Obstacle is the Way and immediately checked out 3 more books: Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, Letters from a Stoic by Seneca, Enchiridion by Epictetus. He read about the dichotomy of control. Some things are within our power, our judgments, our actions, our responses, our character. Some things are outside our power, other people's opinions, the economy, job opportunities, whether we keep our possessions. The Stoics taught that we should focus entirely on what we control and accept everything else with equanimity. Daniel realized he had spent months trying to control things outside his power, trying to force the job market to offer him a position, trying to make his relationship work through willpower alone, trying to hold onto an apartment he couldn't afford. All wasted energy, all futile effort. What was actually within his control? His response to losing everything, his attitude toward his circumstances, his choices about what to do next, his commitment to becoming a better person regardless of external conditions. That was it. That was all he could control, but it was enough. Daniel made a decision that night. He would treat his collapse not as a tragedy but as a training ground, a harsh, demanding teacher that would force him to develop character, resilience, and wisdom. He would practice Stoic principles with intensity because his circumstances demanded it. He had no safety net, no backup plan, no cushion of wealth or privilege, just Stoic philosophy and his own determination to rebuild from nothing. He found a shelter that provided beds for homeless men. It was crowded and uncomfortable, but it was warm and safe. Daniel was grateful. He practiced negative visualization in reverse. Instead of imagining loss, he recognized that things could always be worse. He had his health. He had his mind. He had access to libraries where he could read and learn. He had opportunities to work, even if they were menial. He had everything he needed to practice virtue and build character. The external circumstances were difficult, yes, but they were also indifferent, neither good nor bad, just circumstances to work with. Daniel found work washing dishes at a restaurant. Minimum wage, 10-hour shifts. His hands cracked and bled from the hot water and harsh soap. His back ached. His feet throbbed. But Daniel showed up every day on time, worked with focus and discipline, and maintained a positive attitude. He practiced what the Stoics called amor fati, love of fate. Instead of resenting his circumstances, he embraced them. This was his life right now. These were the conditions he had to work with. Fighting reality was pointless. Accepting reality and working within it was wisdom. After 2 months of washing dishes and living in the shelter, Daniel had saved $1,100. Not much, but enough to rent a tiny room in a shared house. The room was barely large enough for a mattress, but it was his. He was no longer homeless. He continued washing dishes and studying Stoic philosophy every free moment. He read during breaks. He read before bed. He read on bus rides. The wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus became his constant companions. They taught him that wealth is not about possessions but about self-sufficiency. That freedom is not about external circumstances, but about internal control. That success is not about achievements but about character. After 6 months of living simply and working humbly, Daniel noticed something remarkable. He was happier than he had been when he had the stable job, the apartment, the car, the girlfriend. Not because his circumstances were better. They were objectively worse by every conventional measure, but because he had changed fundamentally. He had developed an internal foundation that didn't depend on external conditions. He had cultivated gratitude for simple things: a warm meal, a safe place to sleep, good health, the ability to work, access to books and wisdom. He had learned to find satisfaction in virtue rather than validation, in effort rather than outcomes, in character rather than circumstances. He had become, in the Stoic sense, self-sufficient, not financially, not yet, but psychologically, spiritually. His peace of mind no longer depended on having certain things or avoiding certain situations. It depended only on maintaining his character and acting according to his values. This was true wealth. This was genuine freedom. Daniel continued rebuilding slowly and deliberately. He left the dishwashing job for a position as a bookkeeper at a small business. The pay was modest but better. He kept his expenses minimal. He saved aggressively. After a year of strict financial discipline, he had saved $8,000, more than he had ever saved before, despite earning far less than in his previous life. The difference was simple. He had learned to need less, to distinguish between necessities and luxuries, to find joy in simplicity rather than consumption. He enrolled in online courses to develop new skills. He started a side project helping small businesses with basic financial planning. The work was meaningful. He was contributing to others, using his knowledge to help people who struggled with money management just as he once had. His reputation grew through word of mouth. More clients came. His income increased. But Daniel's lifestyle remained simple. He still lived in the small room. He still walked or took buses. He still cooked simple meals at home. He still spent his evenings reading philosophy and practicing Stoic exercises. The difference now was that simplicity was a choice, not a necessity, and that made all the difference. 3 years after losing everything, Daniel's life looked completely different. He had built a successful financial consulting practice, serving individuals and small businesses. His income exceeded what he had earned as an analyst, but he lived on less than half of what he made, saving and investing the rest according to Stoic principles of prudence and self-sufficiency. He had moved into a modest apartment, nothing fancy, just clean, comfortable, sufficient. He had developed deep friendships with people who valued character over status. He had started writing about his experience, sharing the Stoic wisdom that had transformed his life. Thousands of people resonated with his story. They were struggling with their own collapses, their own losses, their own moments of complete defeat. Daniel showed them what he had learned, that losing everything can be the beginning, not the end. That external loss can lead to internal gain. That the worst moments of our lives often contain the most valuable lessons. Daniel developed a framework he called the Stoic transformation through loss. Here it is. First, recognize that loss removes illusions. When you lose your job, you discover whether your identity was too attached to your career. When you lose your wealth, you discover whether your worth was too dependent on your bank account. When you lose relationships, you discover whether you valued people or validation. Loss is a harsh teacher, but it reveals truth. It strips away everything false and shows you what remains. What remains is what's real: your character, your capacity for growth, your resilience. Second, practice radical acceptance of your circumstances. You cannot change the past. You cannot undo losses that have already occurred. Fighting reality wastes energy. Accept what is, not with resignation but with clarity. This is the situation. These are the facts. Now what? This acceptance frees you to focus on what you can control, your response. Third, identify what is truly within your control. Not outcomes, not other people, not the economy or the job market or whether opportunities appear, but your effort, your attitude, your character, your choices about how to spend your time and energy. Focus 100% here. This is your power. This is your freedom. Fourth, embrace voluntary discomfort as training. Your circumstances may force discomfort upon you. Don't resist it. Use it. Let hardship strengthen you. Let difficulty teach you. The Stoics believed that obstacles make us stronger, like how fire refines gold. Your loss is refining you. Let it. Fifth, practice gratitude for what remains. After loss, it's easy to focus on what's gone. The Stoics taught differently. Focus on what remains: your health, your mind, your capacity to learn and grow, your ability to work, your access to wisdom. When Daniel was homeless, he was grateful for libraries, for shelters, for the chance to work washing dishes. This gratitude sustained him when nothing else could. Sixth, rebuild from internal values rather than external goals. Most people rebuild by trying to return to what they lost. Same type of job, same lifestyle, same identity. Daniel rebuilt differently. He asked, "What kind of person do I want to become? What values do I want to guide my life? What does a good life actually look like?" He built his new life around answers to these questions, not around trying to recreate his old life. Seventh, live with radical simplicity. Need less, own less, depend less on external conditions. The less you need, the more freedom you have. The less you own, the less you can lose. Daniel's simple lifestyle after his collapse wasn't poverty. It was liberation. He had learned that sufficiency is wealth. That simplicity is freedom. Eighth, contribute to others who are struggling. Use your experience to help. Daniel's consulting practice focused on people in difficult financial situations. He understood their fear, their shame, their confusion. He could guide them with empathy and wisdom earned through his own collapse. Your loss has meaning when you use it to serve others. Ninth, maintain your practice regardless of circumstances. Daniel practiced Stoic exercises when he was homeless. He practiced when he was rebuilding. He practices now that he's stable. The practice doesn't depend on conditions. It creates the internal foundation that remains constant through all conditions. This consistency is what transforms Stoic philosophy from theory into reality. 10th, remember that loss is temporary but character is permanent. Everything external can be lost. Job, money, health, relationships, reputation, everything. But character cannot be taken from you. It can only be developed or neglected by your own choices. Daniel lost everything external, but he gained something far more valuable, a character built on Stoic principles. Wisdom earned through hardship, resilience forged through difficulty, a self that exists independently of circumstances. This is the paradox the Stoics understood. Sometimes you must lose everything to gain what truly matters. Daniel often says that losing everything was the best thing that ever happened to him, not because the experience was pleasant. It was brutal, humbling, terrifying at times, but because it forced him to confront fundamental questions he had been avoiding. Who am I beneath my job title? What is my worth beyond my bank account? What kind of life do I actually want to live? What values will guide my choices? Without the collapse, Daniel would still be drifting, working a job he didn't care about, accumulating things he didn't need, living by default rather than by design. The loss woke him up. It forced him to build something real, something solid, something that couldn't be taken away by economic shifts or bad luck or circumstances beyond his control. He built a life based on Stoic principles, on virtue and wisdom, on character and contribution. This life is richer than anything he had before, not in money, though he has more of that now, but in meaning, in purpose, in peace, in freedom. The world fears loss. Society teaches us to accumulate, to protect, to hold tight to what we have. We build walls around our wealth, our status, our identities. We live in constant anxiety about losing what we've gained. But the Stoics knew a secret. Loss is a teacher, sometimes the best teacher. It strips away everything false. It reveals what's real. It forces us to discover who we are beneath our possessions and positions. It gives us the opportunity to rebuild on a foundation that cannot be shaken. Not everyone who loses everything will learn these lessons. Some will remain bitter. Some will stay stuck. But those who embrace Stoic wisdom, who see loss as opportunity rather than catastrophe, who focus on what they control and accept what they don't, those people will emerge stronger, wiser, freer. They will have gained something far more valuable than anything they lost. Subscribe to Money and Stoicism to master your finances and your mind. Like this video if you seek true freedom. Now go to the comments and share. What have you lost that ended up teaching you something valuable? A job, a relationship, money, status, health. Write it down. What did that loss teach you? What did you gain that you couldn't have gained any other way? Be honest. Be specific. Your story might help someone else who is going through their own collapse right now. Someone who needs to know that loss is not the end. It's often the beginning. Before you leave, consider this final question. Quietly, just for yourself. What are you holding on to that might be keeping you from becoming who you're meant to be? What loss are you avoiding that might actually set you free? What would you discover about yourself if everything external was stripped away? The Stoics taught that we don't know our true strength until we're tested. We don't know our real character until circumstances demand it. We don't know what we're capable of until we have nothing except ourselves. Maybe loss isn't something to fear. Maybe it's something to embrace, not to seek it out, but to recognize that if it comes, it brings gifts, hard gifts, painful gifts, but gifts nonetheless. The gift of truth, the gift of clarity, the gift of discovering what truly matters. That is wisdom, that is wealth, that is freedom.